Welcome again to my blog entitled Yi Wu, or Medical Enlightenment, where we examine various aspects of Chinese medicine and medicine in general for practitioners and for the public, trying to provide some reliable information on the subject. And today we ask the question, what about the gobbledegook? What about all the Chinese medicine and acupuncture theory that involves yin and yang and meridians and wind and dampness, and all those ideas that form the basis of the theoretical basis of Chinese medicine? And this is what I want to talk about today, and this is something that gradually occurred to me through my career. I realised that what attracted me to acupuncture, for example, in the first place, was the amount of research that existed into it having genuine physiological, useful physiological benefits. And this means that we can point to acupuncture as a valid clean healing modality in medicine. As well, we can look at the mechanisms of acupuncture, and as a neurophysiologist in the 1970s, this is something that attracted me to the subject. The way that neurophysiology scientists could understand how acupuncture could be credible, even if policymakers and other people in the world of medicine struggle to understand how it could have an effect. So those were two strands of research. There was the strand of research that says, does this modality work? Does acupuncture work, or do Chinese herbs work? Then there was the issue of how do they work? What mechanisms underlie that? Because plausibility demands that we must have some understanding of what the heck we're doing. And so there's a lot of work on that. But in the 1990s I began to question the issue of the medical explanatory model that Chinese medicine was using. And this was certainly the area that conventional medicine in Europe in particular attacked acupuncture. They said, okay, acupuncture techniques seem to have some valid effects in, for example, pain control and nausea control, but we doctors don't like all the oriental nonsense that's built around it and that's been there for 2,000 years or so. So this led to a crisis of faith for me. I wanted I asked the question whether we could scientifically explore the Chinese medicine model, whether we could find ways to understand the diagnoses that Chinese medicine uses in the clinic. What is kidney yin deficiency? What is kidney yang deficiency? Do these have any basis in reality, in scientific reality? So this is the subject that I chose to write a thesis on for my master's degree in around about 1999-2000. And I was glibly using the expression Chinese medicine's medical model in my thesis, and I realized that an external examiner with no interest in Chinese medicine necessarily, just looking at the way I was constructing arguments, might say, well, are you not aggrandizing Chinese medicine gobbledegook as a medical model when it's unjustifiable to do that? So this vexed me. I needed to have some definition of what a medical model really is in science. And I was very lucky to find a book by a professor from America who had studied the ontology and the theory of knowledge of medicine in general, and wrote quite a heavyweight book on it. And in this book I found a one-paragraph definition of what a medical model was. And so this is an interesting question. Does the theory that we use in Chinese medicine count as an explanatory model, as a medical model, or is it really just to be labelled gobbledegook or nonsense or metaphysics or whatever words you care to use? So I think it's quite interesting to go through his definition, Professor Edmund Murphy, and go through his definition and look at the extent to which Chinese medicine fits this definition. So he says a medical model is a representation of a complicated process as an abstract set of relationships among its known or conjectured components. Oh. we have to look at this a little bit closely and go slowly from this, because this is a very this is a densely written definition here. A representation of a complicated process. And that, well, yes, this is the whole point about the early Chinese investigation of nature, was that they realized early on that it's complicated, that lots of different things all interact, and it's very difficult to know causalities and where causalities begin and end. And there are very few more complicated processes in the universe than the human body. The sheer dance of the biochemistry, the neurology, the whole system is massively complicated, and then that connects to the environment, to the microbiome in our gut, to the microbiome in the world around us, to the climate, and this is very, very complicated. So in a sense, we could say that that's what, at least what Chinese medicine tries to do, is to represent that complexity. Okay, so the definition says, as an abstract set of relationships among its known or conjectured components. An abstract set of relationships among its known or conjectured components. Now, when we go and study Chinese medicine, or if we pick a foundation text off the shelf, we will often see representations, maps of the way the causalities are understood in Chinese medicine. And here's one example, just showing the way that emotions impact on us, the way that diet impacts on us, the way that we can label the dysfunctions that arise, and the way that those dysfunctions can guide us towards treatment. So I think that it's fair to say that Chinese medicine meets this first part of Edmund Murphy's definition. It really is a representation of a complicated process as an abstract set of relationships among its known or conjectured parts. That's what Chinese medicine does. That's what it is. Models exist, if we go on to talk about Edmund Murphy's model, to help understanding and to allow practical applications even when the system is not fully understood, and so prompt further inquiry. Does Chinese medicine do this? Does it allow us to understand the relationship between things, and then to allow practical applications even when the system isn't fully understood? Well, that's exactly what it does. That's exactly what Chinese medicine theory does. It allows us to understand the relationship between things, the relationship between climate and our health, between diet, emotions, our health, all these things, and the way that those impact and the way that those change through time as well. So, and practical applications, well, it does. It's the whole wording that we use in Chinese medicine tells us what to do. If we diagnose liver yin deficiency, that gives us a practical application. We need to find things that help nourish the yin of the liver. If the kidney yang is deficient, we need to find things that strengthen kidney yang. So even though we don't necessarily understand what kidney yang means, or what kidney yin deficiency means, or all those things, the system is not necessarily fully understood, but it allows us to intervene. It allows practical applications, and it also prompts further inquiry. It allows us to ask questions, such as, what do we give people who show signs of a kidney yin deficiency? So again, I think this next part of the formal definition of a medical model is actually met by Chinese medicine. So we can tick that box as well. Models do this, Edmund goes on, models do this by reorganizing facts and ideas in terms that are compact and readily grasped. By reorganizing facts and ideas in terms that are compact and readily grasped. Well, certainly Chinese medicine is relatively easy to understand. When you're learning it, it's quite easy to understand what dampness is, or heat, or cold, or excess, or deficiency. All these ideas of Chinese medicine are compact and easily grasped. And they help us reorganize our observations of the way the world works. usefully. So again, this last part of the definition of what a medical model is actually is met by Chinese medicine. And I think that we could go back over this definition and ask the question, well, does modern medicine have this? Does modern scientific medicine have compact and easily grasped analyses of the whole system of the human body working together, or is it quite fragmented and lacking in an overall overarching theory of an overarching explanatory model? So that's my take on the gobbledegook, and I think we can say that Chinese medicine does appear to meet the definition of an explanatory medical model. And this, I think, is quite interesting. I'm not aware of anybody putting this in quite these terms before. But this is a really important point, and politically as well, because this business of the friction between modern biomedicine and traditional Chinese medicine is a difficult one. And it's one where I think that traditional practitioners should stand up and should be able to make a rational argument for why their explanatory model has value. So that's my explanation on the business of explanatory models, or the gobbledegook as people would have it on Chinese medicine. So thank you very much for listening to this short video blog, and obviously I'd like you to like this, to share it, and to put this out in the world, because I'm not necessarily only talking to practitioners. I hope that I'm talking to other people, other thinkers around the world about what makes this medicine interesting. So once we accept that there might be something interesting and valuable in this model, in the Chinese medicine explanatory model, the way it approaches health and disease, then we can move on and begin to learn it more fully, and to find out why it's useful in the real world. So thank you for listening. Like, share, comment or whatever, and I look forward to seeing you in my next blog. Thank you for listening.